Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The lead Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1138 of the live War News stream. And of course, it is the Sunday night fundraiser stream as well. So it is a big fundraiser tonight, and it's already reached almost $700. And we also have massive news tonight that Iran is preparing to launch a major missile attack on Israel, according to reports. Russia is also escalating sabotage in Europe, and Ukraine is advancing into Russia's Belgorod region as we speak. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, things are only going up in the world. The stock market might not be, but other things are only going upwards and onwards in the world. As we have been able to hear, that Israeli intelligence has confirmed that there will be a major attack by the Islamic Republic of Iran, possibly within the very near future, as it appears that the Iranian government is now considering the likelihood of war to be an inevitable certainty at this point in between the United States of America, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the State of Israel. We have also been able to hear that the Iranian government has issued threats to every country in the surrounding region that if they join or support the United States in the conflict against Iran, then they will be met with massive and considerable reprisals that will start to deal significant damage to those countries, their governmental systems, and their people as a whole. Meanwhile, the Yemeni Houthis have now directly threatened open attacks against the United Arab Emirates for reasons that are largely unknown today. It may be the fact that they have Lamborghinis and the Houthis only have Chargers. We're not entirely sure on that one, but we did hear that the threats were issued. We have also been able to hear in other major news today that a new mineral agreement is apparently going to be signed in between the United States and Ukraine here within the near future, as diplomatic delegation teams from Ukraine are currently on their way back to Washington, D.C. to discuss the new minerals deal and possibly iron out some of the kinks that we've seen with it so far. We have also been able to hear in other significant news that the Polish have now declared that the United States of America in any peace treaty recognizing Russian sovereignty over Crimea or any other land that has been taken or annexed by the Russian Federation here in the future, once a peace agreement is made, if ever, will be a red line for the Polish, and that they will not be agreeing to any such circumstance because they'll be jeopardizing and threatening the security of the remainder of Eastern Europe well on into the future. Also, inside of Ukraine, we have been able to hear that the Ukrainian armed forces have continued to hold their lines in the areas of Toretsk and Pkrovsk, and we've also been able to hear that the Ukrainian armed forces are also continuing to advance inside of Belgorod, which has been confirmed by Russian military bloggers not that long ago. We have a major amount of news to cover today. And hopefully we will be able to see that my voice is able to pull through. It actually was doing a lot better before the stream. And for some reason, when I get on air, my voice does like marginally worse. I don't know what's the reasoning behind that. Like, I'm not stressed out or anything. It just does. But nevertheless, we are happy to have all of y'all here tonight. And also, one more thing we have to say before we actually get into the news is that tonight we have a fundraiser for Nova Ukraine, which is an amazing nonprofit that has been supporting the Ukrainian people and the humanitarian struggles that we've been seeing their nation face for well on over years at this point. They've done an absolutely incredible job, and they are one of our #1 fundraisers that we run here on this channel. Nevertheless,
it's already doing so good, by the way. It's almost up to 900 raised already, and the goal was 2,500 tonight, so it's already doing fantastic, sitting around 900 or so, so doing fantastic.
And it's doing absolutely incredible. But moving on from that, and on into the major news of the night, it is time for us to move on into the Islamic Republic of Iran, or largely the Middle East as a whole, and what we could largely start to begin to call the Iranian news segment, as it appears that a actual war against Iran is going to be inevitable at this point. The state of Israel has been able to get some pretty decent intelligence where they believe that Iran is going to be conducting a preemptive strike against Israel with hundreds of missiles here within the near future. An attack such as this is not unheard of, at least inside of the area of the Middle East, and especially when dealing with the Islamic Republic of Iran in the past. Over the past year and a half, the Islamic Republic of Iran has directly conducted 2 major rocket and missile attacks, along with a large drone swarm, against the state of Israel directly. Some of those missiles and drones ended up hitting their targets, although they caused minor damage. But a decent amount of those drones and missiles were shot down by coalition air defenses inside of Israel, the Kingdom of Jordan, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia that were all being used in conjunction with Israeli defense to shoot down most of the incoming bombs that were flung towards Israel's way. It appears, at least at this point, that the Islamic Republic of Iran is now saying that they will be possibly conducting another attack, and the state of Israel is now once again sounding the sirens and warning that this could be something that's happening here incredibly soon. We've also been able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Iran, in additional news, has put all of their forces on high alert, as a senior Iranian official has told Reuters that the Supreme Leader Committee has placed Iran's armed forces on high alert amid the President of the United States' threat of U.S. military action if a nuclear deal is not reached. It appears that the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Islamic government in Iran is now considering, once again, due to their unwavering resolution to produce and field a operational nuclear weapon, that there is going to be absolutely no way, shape, or form that American negotiations will begin and conclude with the Islamic Republic of Iran agreeing to denuclearize. For that reason, we are now seeing that the Islamic Republic of Iran has now put their military forces on high alert, which may be another telltale sign for the Israelis that there could be a major preemptive strike attempted towards Israel before the Iranians are actually attacked by the United States. If the Iranians already know that an attack by the United States and Israel is inevitable at this point due to their unchanging position on denuclearization, then they most likely will attempt to make the first strike, so that way they'll be, at least in their minds, one step ahead, although it's highly unlikely that they would be one step ahead, because they wouldn't be able to target and destroy all U.S. and Israeli abilities inside of the region, no matter how hard they tried, in a single debilitating strike, or first strike. We've also been able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Iran is continuing to try and position itself in a very aggressive way within the region, even to its neighbors, as we've heard that they have now issued threats to the surrounding countries near to Iran. Sorry, everyone. I don't know why I'm coughing so hard tonight, but according to an Iranian official who spoke to Reuters, Iran has issued notices to Kuwait, Iraq, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Turkey, and Bahrain, and that any support for U.S. airstrike against Iran, including the use of their national airspace, territory, or bases of the U.S. military during an attack, would be considered an act of hostility, meaning that any country that is basing U.S. forces within the region right now, and that those forces that would end up attacking Iran comes from an airbase inside of one of those countries, the Islamic Republic of Iran is going to be considering that that country is also a hostile party in the conflict and pretty much forcibly drag them in. That's largely what we're thinking at this point, at least, and it does appear that that's going to be a high likelihood the Iranians will push that forward in an attempt to try and push a lot of these countries, at least on the diplomatic level, to persuade the United States to conduct attacks that are originated inside of the United States or originate in some sort of a territory outside of their own borders of a country in the Middle East, meaning that the American attacks would be a lot less frequent, at least in their ability to strike the Iranians, and it also means that the intensity of the air campaign would be a lot less frequent. It would be a more infrequent sort of a thing than a highly frequent, high-tempo sort of an air operation over the Islamic Republic of Iran. It does appear, however, that while they are continuing to threaten other countries that they should not get involved and they should not touch the Islamic Republic of Iran, or much less let the United States touch the Islamic Republic of Iran, it appears that they have now given orders to the Houthis that the Houthis need to start threatening other countries that are near to the area of the Persian Gulf, as news did come out today that the Houthis are apparently now threatening to attack the United Arab Emirates, which we really do not know why that is being threatened. The United Arab Emirates is largely a neutral country inside the Middle East and has been recognized as so by most sides throughout the previous decades. Not only that, the United Arab Emirates is not taking an official position that has been condemning of the Yemeni Houthis, and so it appears a little bit odd that they would go out of their way to start issuing threats that they will begin to attack the United Arab Emirates here within the near future. It is highly possible.
I think it's honestly because so far Iran has threatened a lot of countries in the Middle East so far that if any of their air bases within their countries, for example, Qatar, I believe the UAE was another one, and also Kuwait, if any of those air bases are used to stage attacks on Iran by the United States in the upcoming, what's believed to be an upcoming attack, then Iran's going to attack those countries in retaliation. So I think the Houthis are simply mirroring that same sentiment that their funder, Iran, is saying by saying they're going to try to start attacking the UAE in the future. It's just sort of like a subtle warning to basically keep them out of the conflict.
That's possible. That may be likely so, but it does appear that the Houthis are continuing to be a little bit more hostile. I also saw someone in the chat ask, the Houthis, are there any of them left? Yeah, there's actually a large amount of them left. Apparently, according to U.S. officials involved in the Department of Defense, they've actually stated that the air campaign against the Houthis has largely been unsuccessful, at least with the original goals that were in mind, and that they've really only put a dent into the Houthis with these major airstrikes that we've been conducting. Once again, furthering my idea, like I've been saying in the past, that if you really want to deal with the Houthis, you have to go in on the ground with Marine Expeditionary Units and actually deal with them physically on the soil of Yemen. You can't just bomb them into oblivion. They are going to come back. And that's exactly what we're learning at this point. So it appears that once again, the entire Department of Defense was somehow wrong, along with the President of the United States, and we were able to get that right, sitting in the comfort of our home right here in front of a computer and just using common sense and good judgment. And that would seem to be something that is always sorely amiss over the past decade or so in the U.S. government. But nevertheless, moving on from that, and out of that little bit of news that the Houthis are threatening to attack the United Arab Emirates, we have been able to hear that a lot of people have been weighing in their opinions right now on the overall situation, or at least the Israeli situation, with the impending attack that will be launched on them from the Islamic Republic of Iran. As Israel warns, Iran may attack with hundreds of missiles soon, and will Iran do this before the U.S. attacks? And it seems as though a lot of people are saying that Iran will do it preemptively. Others are saying that there's a 50-50 chance. Some are saying that Iran will wait until afterwards, and others are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So it looks like 52% of the audience said yes, Iran will attack preemptively, meaning attack Israel before the U.S. attack on Iran, while 23% said there's a 50-50 chance, and 18% said no, Iran will wait until afterwards, after the U.S. attacks their country, before they start launching missiles at Israel. And right now, the big question is, what is the timing going to be on this U.S. attack on Iran? Because, of course, we have a tentative deadline that there's about a month remaining before the U.S. president said that he's going to actually enact consequences consequences on Iran for not meeting a nuclear deal with the United States. So that is the tentative deadline. But of course, that could change because things are not really concrete with the current U.S. administration. So that could change at any moment. Basically, it comes down to whether or not Iran believes an attack is imminent. If they believe the U.S. will attack under any circumstances, and it's going to be pretty much imminent, the U.S. is going to go in and strike the Iranian nuclear sites, then Iran will probably end up doing this preemptively to basically put the U.S. on the back foot and cause Israel to basically jump ahead with their war plans and start basically defending their country right now. That would probably be what they're going to do. So I'm with the 51%. And right now, in my opinion, I would say that a U.S. attack on Iran probably is imminent, and it's probably going to happen because we've amassed so much stuff in the Middle East. For us to simply walk away and not do anything to Iran would be unprecedented, in my opinion, to say the least. So I'm with the 51%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be with the 51%. Iran will most likely conduct a preemptive attack. It's almost an inevitable certainty at this point that the United States is going to end up conducting an air campaign against Iran along with Israel to attempt to destroy their nuclear research and development facilities across the country. But one thing that's also highly certain with that is that if the Iranians know that that's inevitable, why in the world not strike first? If they're going to be destroyed either way, whether they strike first or not, why not try and have some sort of an attacker's advantage at a minimum and start it off on your own accord by launching a first strike on Israel and hopefully overwhelming them or overwhelming air defenses in the entirety of the region so that way they would be able to get at least an attempt at a knockout blow at the very start, instead of having most of their abilities destroyed in an airstrike and then trying to conduct an attack from that position, which would have a far less likelihood of success from that point. So for that reason, that's most likely why Iran is highly considering some form of a preemptive strike, and that's also why Israeli intelligence is suggesting that as well, at least at this point. One thing I will have to say, though, at least as far as Iran goes, is that one thing that's certainly being learned inside of Yemen right now is that airstrikes may not be the be-all, catch-all to every single situation and win every single conflict just by dropping some bombs on people and flying home. Sometimes you have to be able to get down on the ground in there, and while we are seeing that the U.S. is still not wanting to put anyone on the ground to deal with the Houthis, and we're just wanting to sit there and bomb them all day and night, it may be highly likely that there has to be some sort of limited ground involvement by the United States inside of Iran to assure that all parts of the facilities that are involved in the research and development of nuclear weapons inside of Iran are actually dealt with. Otherwise, we could end up just bombing the superficial above-ground structures, and there could be subterranean structures below them that were able to continue on the research, development, and production of nuclear weapons, meaning that we would have started a war and not even achieved anything that we were looking for up till that point. Lessons always have to be learned, and this is one, at least with Western Yemen, that I think we should be learning right here, right now. But
also, by the way, if we only did airstrikes in Iran, of course, the main objective, at least stated by U.S. officials, is they want to go in and strike all the nuclear sites inside of Iran to take out their nuclear program, because according to reports we've been hearing over the last 6 or 7 months, Iran is about 1 week away at any point from actually finishing development of a nuclear weapon. So that is a big thing right now that the U.S. administration is trying to prevent actively right now. But the catch is, though, like the Enforcer is saying, first of all, you actually have to go and be able to ensure that you're taking out all of the nuclear facility. That's number one. And then number two, even if you're able to take them out from the air completely without a ground campaign, that is going to trigger Iran to go into martyrdom mode, and they're going to go berserk. They're going to start launching attacks on Israel. They're going to launch attacks on our Middle Eastern partners, like, for example, Qatar, where we have air bases, and also probably Kuwait as well. So they're going to go crazy. So you might as well go in preemptively with a ground attack as well, in addition to the air campaign, because at that point, war with Iran is going to be inevitable because they're going to be going berserk. So it's going to happen one way or the other. Airstrikes or not, you'll probably end up with a ground invasion either way.
I would say so, at least in my opinion. One thing also I see some people saying, I see all kinds of people saying stuff, and I gotta say, it's always a charm, it's always a wonder to see people saying stuff like this. Oh, but y'all went into Iraq and it didn't work. Why do it again? Why do it a second time? Okay, so we went into Iraq in 2003 because there was a claim that they were creating weapons of mass destruction, which were not nuclear weapons, they were biological and chemical weapons. So we went into Iraq to go deal with those. That's why, found that out a little while ago, about 2 weeks ago, that's why no nuclear weapons were ever found, because we actually weren't really going to look for nuclear weapons, it was more so chemical weapons, funnily enough. I didn't know that either. Another thing is, is that unlike Iraq, where Saddam Hussein was swearing up and down that they weren't even close to creating a nuclear weapon and really had no intention of creating a nuclear weapon, the leader of Iran is saying, we're creating a nuclear weapon. We want to kill everyone. We want to kill the Israelis and Americans. These nuclear weapons are so good because they'll melt them right off the bone, like KFC hot and ready $5 fill-ups. So we're going to keep working on this until we're able to have a usable, fieldable nuclear weapon. So there's a little bit of a difference for some of those who may be a little bit brain dead out there in between Iraq and Iran. Iraq, Saddam Hussein said, we don't have nuclear weaponry. We said they were trying to create chemical weaponry and biological weaponry. We went in. With Iran, they're saying they're creating a nuclear weapon. We know they're creating a nuclear weapon. Everything in the world is showing that they are. They have nuclear enrichment facilities. They have nuclear reactors. They have every single component and piece that would be needed right now to actually create a nuclear weapon. So for that reason, you have to deal with them. Denuclearization is a little bit of an important thing. For those of y'all who like to go kumbaya, which is a small group of people, and I'd have to generally say that this small group of people sometimes lets their moral superiority get ahead of their intelligence, which is quite often for that group, is that you go kumbaya until the guy like the fat dude in North Korea gets a nuke. And then everyone goes, why didn't we stop him? And then everyone wants to complain about that until the end of time, that they now have nuclear weapons and it's a highly unstable regime and it's a dictatorship. And now we can't do anything to them because, they have a nuclear weapon. They could just nuke us if we try and do something to them or try and stop the suffering of their people. That is something that a lot of people always complain about. Oh, North Korea has a nuke. And then it's like, now we are seeing the Iranians are clearly working towards one. They've said it themselves. And so now we're saying, well, we have to deal with that because they can't have a nuclear weapon. It's a highly unstable government, just like North Korea's. So we have to go in and deal with this. And then some people want to go, oh no, we can't do that. It's like, that's just goofy. Like you have to do what you have to do. If you're going to wuss out like that, you might as well just give up. Like you might as well just give up on everything. We might as well just give up the United States and hand it over to the Chinese or something because they'll do better at running it than a bunch of cowards. Like that's the honest reality of it. So with that in mind, I will have to say the Iranians are probably going to conduct a preemptive attack, so if it appears that they are going to do so, we probably need to roll forward all of our plans and begin the airstrikes as soon as we possibly can. That would be my opinion on it. But nevertheless, that is the situation that we're hearing of right now inside the Middle East, and it's one that's largely just more diplomatic developments at this point than military developments, but it is setting the groundwork for probably one of the most destabilizing and one of the most difficult periods that we've seen so far in the history of this conflict. But nevertheless, we are going to be moving on from the Middle East and on up into Europe itself, as we have been able to hear of a lot of news in this area as well. We have been able to hear that apparently a new mineral agreement is going to be made in between the United States and Ukraine, although we really do not know the terms of this at this point. It's incredibly difficult to lay that out because the terms are changing extremely like they did in the first one. But the Ukrainian delegation will travel to Washington next week to negotiate a new draft agreement with the U.S. on mineral resources. And that was according to the Associated Press, citing the economy minister, Severodinko. It does appear that at this point, the United States of America and Ukraine are revisiting the minerals agreement once more to be able to try and get some sort of an actual mineral deal put out. We don't know if there's going to be any security guarantees or guarantee of military support well on into the future of this at this point, but it is still something that is fairly interesting to note, at least at this point right now. Moving on from that, I got to be honest with y'all, folks. I thought I was going to be fine tonight. I'm actually sweating like a mule over here right now, and I'm about to cough every other sentence. So I'm going to be honest, Mandy. We're going to have to kind of round this thing out a little bit quickly tonight because I'm actually feeling a little worse tonight than I did last night. So moving on from that and on into the rest of the news, we actually have another question for all of you. Matthew, what are people thinking about that one?
All right, so we ran a second poll on the Middle East situation because, of course, it's a big topic and we have many questions to ask. So this question says, will a U.S. financial collapse cause Iran to speed up an attack on Israel for maximum damage on the West? Because that's a pretty big topic brewing right now. And 47% said, yes, it will cause a fast attack from Iran, so that way they can try to harm the U.S. economy even further, while 30% said, no, Iran will stay the course, and 14% said, I think it's a 50-50 chance. And of course, right now, most people will know that the U.S. economy is not doing too great, at least in the stock market side of things right now. And it looks like tomorrow could shape up to be a pretty rough day for the U.S. economy. So that is something, of course, that our adversaries do watch. But I will say this. it's not just limited to the United States. The entire global market is doing terrible right now. Global markets everywhere are collapsing pretty much under our feet, and the U.S. will probably follow suit tomorrow, unfortunately. So that could cause states like Iran to think this is the time to go in and start causing chaos as much as possible by attacking Israel, because if they cause a geopolitical instability at the same time we're having financial instability, that could cause a pretty bad recipe for disaster here in the United States. So, of course, our enemies look at that closely, and they're probably following it. So I would say that it might cause Iran to speed it up. I'm actually with the 14%. I think it's a 50-50 chance. There's no telling what they're going to do because, of course, Iran has its own considerations because the oil price is dropping like crazy right now. But I think it's a 50-50 chance. But, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, in my opinion, that may actually cause the Iranians to attack. Some of y'all may know that tomorrow we're apparently going to be going into, I believe, what's called Black Monday again, if that's correct, Matthew.
Yeah, Black Monday was 1987. It was a pretty big crash. It was also 1929, which even a bigger crash than that. So yeah, some are saying it could be Black Monday 2.0 or even a worse version of it, perhaps.
Yeah, so as many people have been hearing, the stock market is expected to completely crash tomorrow. It's most likely going to do that. So at this point, considering the economic instability that's now stemming from the United States, and it's going to be causing a global crash around the world, we can already see that in some stock markets like Japan, where the circuit breakers went off today and the stock market stopped trading. It appears that it's highly likely at this point that there could be a large amount of economic tumult moving on through the course of next week and probably on into the next several months. With that in mind, the Islamic Republic of Iran may see that this would be a good situation to start conducting major attacks because their economies are in the gutter. The West's isn't, but the West's will be going into the gutter by tomorrow. So with that in mind, that may actually be a good reason for the Iranians to start conducting preemptive attacks against Israel, while the U.S.'s attention is tied up with trying to damage control a situation that didn't even have to be started in the first place by not laying out tariffs on everyone everywhere for any reason. So that largely will be something that we might end up seeing, or may end up being a decent likelihood there. Nevertheless, also, Matthew, really quickly, I would text you this, but, there's a lot going on. I'm trying to get through this fast. There are a lot of pro-Iranian bots in the chat right now. I've been seeing a load of them. So if you can make sure to just find those people and get them, I would be greatly appreciative. I'll try to get a couple of them myself, but there's been a decent amount of them. I'd say at least a dozen so far that I've seen. But moving on from that and on into the area of the Baltic Sea, we have been able to see that there was an interesting interception that occurred today in between a Tu-134 and an F-16 over the area of the Baltic Sea, which we can see right here. You can see the F-16 off in the distance. Apparently, the Tu-134 is a Tu-154 that was modified at some point for use in the Russian Navy, which you can see right here. And it appears that it started to get incredibly close to Baltic airspaces or Polish airspace and was forced to divert back to Kaliningrad. Moving on out of that news, we also were able to hear that the Polish are now going to be declaring that a red line is going to be drawn over the situation of recognizing Ukrainian territories as Russian. The Polish have warned the President of the United States against making a historic mistake by recognizing Russia's claims to Crimea and other occupied Ukrainian territories. Paweł Kohl, who is the Polish advisor, stresses that such recognition would be a red line for Poland and Central Europe, setting a dangerous precedent for Russian expansion. Kohl emphasized that discussions about Ukraine's security must consider the broader regional security context. While confident the President of the United States won't allow Russia to control over Ukrainian land, Kohl highlighted the need for immediate tactical support for Ukraine rather than focusing on post-conflict agreements, largely showing that the Polish government is still considering that it is a major concern for national security and really Eastern European security for the NATO alliance and the Republic of Poland, that the sovereignty of Ukrainian lands according to their 1991 borders is officially recognized by the United States of America, and that there is no cessations or really concessions that are given to the Russian Federation in the negotiations to allow for Ukrainian lands to be recognized as Russian lands on into the future, even including Crimea and the Donbass, which we've already seen that the United States of America, at least, has stated that they supposedly might consider Crimea and the Donbass to be Russian territory. So it does appear that the Polish are taking a very strong stance on that, at least at this point. Moving on from that and out of Eastern Europe, and on into the area of Ukraine itself for the Ukrainian front lines to get through this a little bit quickly tonight. Once again, we want to say this before we get into it. Big apologies to everyone. I actually today, in the middle of the day, my voice was sounding a lot better than it was yesterday, and I actually was feeling a lot better. Now that I'm on air, I'm sweating like a dog right now. Well, sweating like a pig or a dog. Neither of those animals sweat, but I'm sweating profusely right now. And also, I feel like I'm maybe getting back into like almost a feverish kind of a state, and I'm starting to cough a good bit. So I'm trying to get through this a little bit quick because if I stay on air like that, is this only going to get worse and worse. I have a very short temper or patience really when I'm not feeling great. So when I see stupidity in the chat, like someone saying Iran is a good country, I have like a very short fuse to deal with on seeing things like that. But moving on from that and on into the area of Kursk and Belgorod, we were able to see that the Ukrainian armed forces are still in control of the Sucha border checkpoint, which we were able to see right here because the Ukrainian flag is still waving over the remains, or more so the shelled out remnants of the Sucha border checkpoint, which we could see right there. And that's the end of the clip, but still very nice to see and good to know that the Ukrainians are controlling that area. Meanwhile, we also got to see that Russian forces were hit with some mortars today as an attack column attempted to try and take out a Ukrainian position near to the area of the Kursk-Sumy border. And we see the Ukrainians also landing mortar rounds on top of the attacking Russian unit and taking them on out.
Also, by the way, I got to give a shout out. The fundraiser is currently sitting at $1,757 raised of the $2,500 goal. So the fundraiser is going strong, by the way. It's been a second since we had an update about it, but it is doing pretty damn good, if I do say so myself. It is somewhere in the neighborhood of about $700, $800 away from the goal, so getting pretty close. So feel free to donate and help us get to that goal so the enforcer can go get some fresh air.
Yeah, some fresh air and probably a little bit of a breather. But moving on from that and into the next bit of news that we have, we also have been able to see that the 225th, which was claimed to be captured today by the Russian army inside of Kursk, is still active, and we could actually see here a clip made by the 225th later on in the day, just hours ago, showing that they were still on the move in the area. We see them moving on through largely a convoy of ATVs that are moving onto this area. And that's the end of the clip right there. Pretty impressive to see, nevertheless. Moving on from that and out of that clip, we also were able to hear that the Ukrainian armed forces are continuing to advance in Belgorod. We were able to hear, at least according to a Russian military blogger in this post, that the Ukrainians have advanced, and according to his words, this morning in the southwest of the settlement, the Ukrainian armed forces wearing identification signs in the form of white sashes rolled onto the positions of the 34th Brigade, technically meaning, at least according to this Russian military blogger, that they were disguised as Russian soldiers. White armbands are an identifier of the Russian armed forces. The latter rolled back, surrendering their positions to the enemy to a depth of 600 meters, the yellow line on the map. At the moment, the forces of the 155th Marine Brigade of the Pacific Fleet are storming and clearing the enemy's occupied positions. The enemy's evacuation supply of reserves is also blocked. We do not know about the truth of the last part. We do know that the 155th is currently counterattacking right now at those positions, but it does appear that the Ukrainian armed forces, even according to the Russians, are still able to continue to take more ground and advance within the area, as it does appear that the Russian Federation is dealing with an even more difficult time with the Ukrainians inside of Belgorod than they were inside the Kursk Oblast. While the Ukrainians have not made a massive amount of ground inside of Belgorod, it does appear that these holdings are a lot more defensible than the ones inside of Kursk, and it may actually take as long for the Russians to start pushing the Ukrainians out of Belgorod as it did for them to start pushing the Russians out of Kursk, meaning that more Russian soldiers will have to be tied up inside the Russian Federation to deal with the situation that's currently being seen inside of Belgorod along with Kursk. Nevertheless, we are going to be moving on from the Kursk and Belgorod areas because we do have another little question here. European Union officials have said that Russia is escalating sabotage attacks in Europe, as we've heard that their hybrid form of warfare really against Europe, which largely consists of sabotage and attacks, is
Holy moly! Nicholas Connor just came in with a 500 Canadian, and we just hit the goal. Let's go! Jaga Jaga Eagle! Yes, sir. Look at that. Baba Yaga, Baba Yaga. That is doing fantastic, by the way. We are $34 above the goal right now, and a huge thanks to Nicholas for making that happen and taking us right over that goal as well. So that is fantastic to see once again. We have now officially smashed the goal of the night. A huge shout out to DLC for once again making that happen.
And I got to say, an absolutely massive shout out. I'd sound more excited if I could, but I'm going to cough if I do. A massive shout out to y'all hitting 2.5 thousand in about 45 minutes. That is absolutely incredible. And we got to give a massive shout out to everyone here in the Lee Spring Army who's been able to reach that amazing fundraiser goal at this point in the stream so early on in. That's truly incredible, considering that the stream also won't be lasting too long tonight. That is even more impressive on top of that we were able to reach that fundraising goal that fast. So a massive shout out to all of y'all once again, everyone who supported both the massive donors and the smaller donors, because all combined, y'all made the total what it is. So a massive shout out to all of y'all. And also, moving on from that and on into the poll, considering that we were talking about the hybrid warfare and the sabotage of European factories, a lot of people have been saying the the EU officials are saying that the Russians are blowing shit up. And a lot of people are wondering, is that a preparation for war or not? Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so 57% of the audience said yes, it's a preparation for war, while 28% said no, it's just the usual Russian chaos, and 11% said it seems like it could be a preparation for war. And this has been going on pretty much ever since the Ukraine war started. So this is nothing new, but it sounds like Russia is ramping it up. And what we're being told is it's arson attacks, it's also stabbing attacks, and things like that. They're blaming that on the Russians and saying they're sending in operatives to Europe to go and conduct these acts. And of course, we have seen several operatives going in and doing things just like that, and they have been caught on occasion, but most of the times they get away. And also, there was a plot uncovered, I believe, by the Germans, by the Russians to go in and actually try to get the Rheinmetall CEO, who's a defense contractor inside of Germany, and Russia was trying to set that up as well, which would have been a very bad thing if they'd gotten away with that. So luckily, they blew the lid on it and stopped it from happening. But with them escalating this, and of course, with the tensions getting even worse between Europe and Russia, this could be a prep for war. But at the same time, though, it's kind of hard to tell because they've been doing it the entire time. So I'm going to say for right now, it could be. I'm going to take the cop-out answer right now. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that I largely believe it may be a preparation for war, although it's really hard to tell. We do know that some of these attacks were facilitated, supported, and funded by the Russian Federation's FSB. But beyond that, we don't really know a lot more about most of the attacks, like the stabbing attacks, the running over people with cars, that sort of thing. We really don't know if those attacks are just whack jobs or if those are all related to the Russians, because not every single thing happening in Europe right now is going to be the Russians. So I'd have to also take the cop-out answer as well. It looks like it could be, but not every single one of them could be traced back to that, so it's a little bit hard to say. Nevertheless, I hope that does address that poll the best we can. And before we move on into the rest of the news that we have in Ukraine, which is the Frontline news, the location unknowns, and others, Matthew, I understand that we have a very long list of top donors to get to tonight, of a whole bunch of amazing folks that have helped to fundraise for this fundraiser and get it to where it is tonight. So who are those folks, Matthew, so that way we can give them a shout out and the big things?
All right, so our top donors of the night are as follows, and it is somewhat of a lengthy list, so bear with me. Our top donor of the night is Tom S., who threw in that $160 donation, the largest one of the night, and huge shout to Tom for also making that happen. We also had a $150 from Captain Ted, as well as a $100 from James Hughes, along with Activista, Old Warrior, Nightmare Before Christmas, and then we had a $50 from Axel K, as well as Samuel Szymensky, and hopefully I'm saying your last name properly, but thank you, Samuel, for that $50. Also, BC's coming through in a $50 as well, along with Mace. And currently, we are sitting at just shy of $2,600 raised, which is tremendous to see once again. But a huge shout out to all of our top donors and all the donors for making this possible tonight. And once again, we sincerely do appreciate it because, of course, you're helping the Enforcer get some fresh air sooner than later, which, of course, is appreciated. Also, shout out to Uncle Vampy, who just threw in a $200 donation, another large one. That's actually the largest super chat, or not the super chat, largest donation of the night so far. So that is fantastic. fantastic to see. So a huge shout out to Uncle Vampy as well. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd also like to give a shout out. We missed one to Nicholas Condor, who threw in a 500 Canadian. That actually is the biggest
Oh yeah,
donation
that's
in
right,
that.
that's
Yeah.
right.
So a big shout out to everyone, all of the massive donors and the small ones, because all of y'all came together to make this fundraiser possible tonight. And it's absolutely crazy to see that we're almost at $3,000 in less than 50 minutes. Really impressive thing. But I do have to say, thank you so much to all of y'all for your support to the fundraiser. That is absolutely incredible and absolutely impressive. And Matthew, I'd perk up if I could. I'm not feeling hot. So with that, let's get on into some questions here, and then we'll move on into the remainder of the news. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right. So moving into our first one, our first question of the night. This one goes to Jeff Veeder, who says, why is Saudi Arabia not doing more militarily against the Houthis?
Why is the Saudis really don't try and do a lot militarily against the Houthis. The Saudis are more so focused on protecting their own borders, or more so protecting skirmishes and raids into Saudi Arabia. They aren't really focused on the external power projection side of things, considering that they're a part of the American security assurances. That's generally a reason why we see that the Saudi Arabians don't operate a lot beyond their borders. So more so, they're involved in border protection and defense, not really involved in foreign affairs. Generally, everyone's left Yemen alone, even the United States, throughout most of the Yemeni civil war, and that's why we've seen so far that there hasn't really been a lot of ground involvement by really anyone inside of Yemen against the Houthis. So I hope that addresses that somewhat well. And with that, we are on to the second question of the segment.
All right, and this one is going to go to, let's see here. This one goes to Alexei, who says, how do you think a war between the U.S. and Iran would actually be fought?
Right now, at least based off of the current U.S., I guess I could say strategy, if you want to call it that. I wouldn't really say that's a doctrine. I wouldn't say that. It's more just a strategy that the United States is employing, is that we would just bomb them. Probably a lot. We would probably try and bomb a lot of their military targets that we could, or that we could physically seize, so airfields, military outposts, naval bases, such things, nuclear research and development facilities. The Iranians might be able to try and fire back something, maybe some limited anti-ship missiles at U.S. ships that got close enough to Iran, such things like that, but it would generally be very one-sided, at least as far as the air campaign would go. That's of course dependent on the U.S. not getting involved on the ground. If we got involved on the ground, it could be a very different kind of a scenario and a very different kind of an outlook. But for right now, it does appear, at least at this moment, that it would be mostly an air operation. So that's what it appears to be. That would be the best answer I could give to that. So with that, we are on, I think, to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news.
All right. And also, by the way, do you have water in there, by the way?
No, I do not.
Well, if you want to go get some water, I can stall for a minute while you go get some, if that would make you feel better.
I honestly, man, I don't think it will right now, man. Like, I'm going through, like, fever sweats and stuff back here right now. Like, it hit me as soon as we were going on air, so I don't think water's going to help too much. This is just, like I'm honestly regressing. But anyways, with that, we are on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to get on into the rest of the news.
All right. And also, by the way, before we get to our last question, a huge shout out to Dennis Higgins for throwing in a $50 donation and helping to bring us up to almost $2,903 raised, which is tremendous to see, by the way. Almost $3,000 raised, which is tremendous. And a huge shout out to Dennis for also helping out with that goal. But moving into our last question here of this segment, this one goes to Andrew Nelson, who says, will China invade Taiwan while lots of assets are near Iran?
I would doubt it, at least personally. I have heard some reports that they're now saying that China could invade in months, but I've been hearing that for years. We've been running this channel for years now, and there's always someone out there saying that China's going to invade by April. They actually said that last year in 2024. They said China's going to invade Taiwan by April. April's come and gone. It's a year after that April. We're now in this April. Now they're saying it again. The reality is that the real timetable is still pushed out towards 2027 at the earliest, and in the most realistic scenario, it's most likely going to be late 2028 or early 2029. That's most likely what it's going to be. So I would highly doubt that they would be able to conduct that invasion of Taiwan, because once again, even if everything in the U.S. armed forces is moved into the Middle East, China still doesn't really have the ability to actually land a force onto the island of Taiwan, because Taiwan still has a military that's well enough armed to make that incredibly difficult, at least for now. So I would highly doubt that they would conduct an invasion of Taiwan. That's still going to be years on into the future. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And it's time for us to get on into the rest of the news. Moving on into Krasnoyarsk inside of eastern Russia, we were able to see that there was some sort of a weird phenomenon that occurred. It appears that one of Russia's electric trains actually caught on fire. It's very rare to see something like this. I don't really know what would have caused it. I'm believing it may have been a partisan attack.
See, this is the thing with these trains. Like when they catch on fire like this is not good. The cars become like chicken roasters, like Kenny Rogers roasters or something like that.
Man, respectfully. And that's the end of that clip right there, but still very interesting to see. Moving on from that and on into the next bit of news that we have our location unknowns. And we were able to see what is being called nowadays Russian motorized infantry, which is this right here.
That's one of those things from Costco, isn't it? That's like one of those little scooter things.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Honestly, that's an improvement from the bicycle because they were on children's bicycles the other day.
Yeah, they are finally getting up to the electric scooters, so I guess it's getting a little bit better.
The only problem is, where the hell would you even charge something like that on the front lines? Like, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. I wonder where that would happen. Well, there goes another one. Oh, that one had a horn. This guy almost ran into the cameraman.
I think he was threatening the cameraman.
I think he may have been with like a shiv or something like that. But moving on from that clip and on to our next one, we also got to see a couple of Bradleys inside of one of the Ukrainian units that was behind the lines. That's a Bradley, that's a Martyr, really cool units to see. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also get to see anti-drone nets that the Ukrainians have now set up. The Russians have been famous for using anti-drone nets throughout most of the war. The Ukrainians have adopted them fairly recently and have begun to use them, as you can see here in this clip.
Also, Russo said, I didn't think you were old enough to know about Kenny Rogers roasters. I'm not. I saw it on Seinfeld, so that's how I know about it. I remember Kramer put up the Kenny Rogers roasters on the wall or something like that. Or they went there or something. I can't remember what the hell it was, but it was in Seinfeld, though, so that's where I know it from. I don't actually know it from real life. Was it a real life thing, or am I being stupid?
I think it may have been a real life thing. The Kenny Rogers Roasters episode, though, that was where they got the chicken from the restaurant. It was really good. And remember, Kramer bought like the chickens to put in his apartment and like raised them, and he had like all the bright red lights in there and everything.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot it.
That's that one. That was a great episode, by the way. That was actually a pretty funny one. And we see them here driving under the drone net. It's quite an extensive, drone net that we can see here.
I don't even know how they would construct something like this in the midst of being shelled or bombed or something like that. It's like, how do you even go about doing this without getting slammed while you're putting...
Oh, sounds like you just cut out right there. Hello? Hello? Let's see, is my audio working? Hold up. Let me check something here, I think. Hello? Matthew, you there? Hang on, folks. It sounds like Matthew just got disconnected from the call, or Discord isn't working. Discord looks to be working. Matthew, I think you're having some major microphone issues there, because it's showing that the call is connected fine, but it's not showing that you're saying anything, and you cut off in the...
can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, the internet just went down for a second. No, it wasn't on my end. It was the internet.
Oh, well, I mean, my internet was running just fine.
It showed everything went down. YouTube, everything.
Man, well, I mean, the stream was running the whole time, man. Like, the chat was going and everything. That's weird. But we can see them here driving into the anti-drone nets. But you cut out in the middle of what you were saying. What were you saying, Matthew?
I was saying something?
Yeah, you were saying something about the drone nets, and you just stopped talking.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was saying that. Hell, I don't even know what I was saying at this point. Honestly, it's a damn good drone net. That's all I know. I lost my thought in the lag.
All right. With that, we're on to the next one, where you got to see the Russian casualty report as well. And the casualty report was pretty significant. And look, the one Bobcat.
Oh, we got a Bobcat. Hey, look at that. We did remember the one Bobcat, though. We may not remember what Matt was saying in his stream of consciousness as it went through the lag, but we do know one Bobcat was gotten. So very nice. But tell us more.
And it was a very impressive loss report. Ms. Decent Keeper of the record stated that troop losses dropped below 1,400, and 4 MLRSs is the highest in 2 weeks, and it's been a very impressive casualty report as of today. We were able to see that 1,330 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 20 APCs, 96 supply trucks, 13 main battle tanks, 56 artillery pieces, 68 drones, 4 MLRSs, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. All in all, it was a pretty impressive day, and it is good to see that the Ukrainian armed forces was able to inflict a high casualty count onto the Russians. Moving on up into the Kupiansk area, we did get to see the Ukrainian anti-drone actions were still underway, and a Supercam drone was knocked out by the Ukrainians today in the most northerly area of the front near Kupiansk. I gotta tell y'all, y'all know what I feel like right now. If y'all get this reference, hopefully y'all do. I feel like SpongeBob when he had the suds. You remember that, Matthew? And they like put like the corks in like the holes on SpongeBob, and he like blowed it up into that thing. That's what I feel like right now.
The suds, eh?
Let me go see if I can pull
Jerry, come home.
Let me go see if I can pull that up. Suds. Yeah, this is it. Hold up, let me go get it because this is the episode right here. That's what I feel like right now.
I thought I said the sucks for a minute. I was like, what? I was like, okay, the suds.
Aw, man. But that was the specific thing I was referencing right there.
Whoa, what the hell? I don't remember that part.
I don't really remember what the context was behind that. I've seen it for memes, but that's what I feel like right now. I actually feel worse now than I did last night, and I like that's a little bit shocking because I was actually telling Matthew right before we went on air. I was like, wow, I feel great. Like honestly, I think I'm almost over this thing. Got on air, and like 2 minutes before the intro ended, I started feeling worse. And so I was like, I don't know what's up with that. Now I'm just feeling like I've got a fever, like in the middle of this. So that's fun. But moving on from that, we also got to see them hitting a Lancet drone up in the northern front near Svatove today as well. And we see them coming on in. And slamming them good, I tell you, slamming them good. Moving on from that, we also got to see this BTR-82 of the Russian armed forces knocked out somewhere near to Rubizhne. We were able to confirm that it was near to Rubizhne because of the soil composition. The soil color around that area is a bit of a darker color, and it does appear that BTR-82 is cooked. Moving on from that clip, and a little bit further on down and into the Bakhmut area, we also got to see the fields of Bakhmut. I wanted to show this to y'all because this will be a little bit shocking. The fields of Bakhmut have been shelled so significantly. That little weird area of dirt down there that's kind of a little bit more pale.
Oh,
holy moly.
Dude,
Brittany Taz just threw in a $500.
A $500 donation from Brittany Taz, by the way. I didn't want to interrupt, but damn, look at that boiler. We're now up to 2,000. It's not updating. It says 2,923 still, but I think it's somewhere around 3,500, but it's not updating. I don't know what the hell is going on with that, but huge shout to Brittany, by the way. That is one of the largest ones of the night. We also had another 500 come in, but that is the second one of the night. So huge shout out to that. And also, it's still not updating. I don't know what the hell's going on.
We were at $3,438. Man, I honestly think your computer is like just playing tricks with you tonight, man, because it updated on my end. Like, dude, I wonder what's going on with that. But still, $3,438 raised. Very impressive. A huge shout out to Brittany Taz for that massive support. That is absolutely amazing. I think technically that is the biggest one of the night because Nicholas Condor threw his in Canadian dollars, and this is in a good old American dollar. So I think this actually is a little bit more valuable, at least for today. Tomorrow that might change. But nevertheless, you see that little light area of color down there in the middle of the picture, Matthew? That like weird looking dirt?
That is some weird looking dirt.
So crazily enough, that actually used to be a small village.
Oh, geez, that's terrible. It was like a straight line village or something.
Yeah, so it was shelled so significantly that all of the buildings were reduced, not even to foundations. They were actually reduced to cinders, like quite literally cinders. So A little bit wild to see that. You can also see a couple of other buildings up there further on up, and most of the trees have been destroyed. It looks like the Somme out here, actually. It's like World War One. You can also see that here as well. You can see some trench works. You can also see some of these buildings that have also been reduced to cinders. But still really crazy to see that some of these buildings have stood, but once again, the damage was much more significant in the last picture we saw as compared to this one. We also got to see another picture here, this once again showing another village row that was reduced to cinders. But a very crazy thing to see this kind of damage, and this one also appears to be close to some sort of a railway berm, so we actually probably can find exactly where that railway berm was, and be able to locate it for y'all to tell y'all exactly what we were looking at. And this area is actually this right here. This is the northern end of Klishkivka, right on the southern end of the Bakhmut battlefield. You can actually see the two little openings to the drainage ditch right there, and you can also see the double-tracked main line that was heading into Bakhmut in this direction with the same kind of curvature on the tracks. So this area, which was once a pretty significant battleground, the Ukrainians were pushed out of it about a year ago. So a lot of this damage is probably about a year old at this point. That's what it looks like. All of the buildings in Klishkivka appear to have been reduced, not even to foundation, to cinder. It also appears that the railway berm itself had suffered significant damage in some areas, to the point that this area here near to the railway crossing actually appears to have been flattened. And also we can see that up here inside of this marshy area, it appears that all of the actual marsh shrubbery had been either destroyed in fire or destroyed from just the shelling alone, and has been reduced to a small swamp of craters. So actually pretty wild to see that. Like absolutely crazy to see the kind of devastation that was left behind, because it actually does look just like the Somme battlefield or no man's land in World War One out here near Bakhmut. But moving on from that and on out of that, we can also see Ukrainian BMP-3 firing at Russian positions here just today. Also, let me unmute that. Let me start over. There's the Ukrainian BMP-3 right down there in that field.
It sounded like somebody shooting.
Oh yes, that little BMP down there is firing its autocannon. We now see it backing up and out. We actually see the commander popping out of his hatch right there. And that's the end of the clip, but still interesting to see, and it does appear that the Ukrainians have been able to hold their ground in Chasiv Yar as of today. Moving on from that and down into Toretsk, we also got to see more fierce fighting happening inside the city. We got some techno remix with that, but we'll be muting that for copyright reasons. I gotta tell you, I don't know what's up with this tonight. I thought it would be getting better. It was getting better all day today until right now. But we can see the...
It was doing so good, and then right when the stream started, it went from like talking like this to, oh man, you start sounding like the hot dog man, like instantly.
Yeah, I know. Like it sucks, man, because like if I could sound different, I would. But if I'm talking louder than this, I'm gonna be choking to death. But there's the end of the clip right there. It's still interesting to see. And moving on to our next clip, we also get to see Ukrainian fiber optic drone hitting Russian forces inside of Toretsk, which we can see right here. Honestly, man, the best stream I ran ever since I came back was the one where I got right off the plane. Like, honestly, and that's sad, man, when you think about it, because I was up for like 16 hours before I ran that show, running through airports and stuff, and that was the best stream I ran in terms of quality. Since then, it's been downhill.
That's probably what happened. Probably a weakened immune system because of a straight 24 hours awake or something like that. And then, of course, you came in contact with the tube full of viruses and stuff like that, and you had to catch one.
Tube full of demons.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that guy, that preacher fella, said, "I don't want to get in the airplane full of demons." Just like, okay, bro. I thought that was the people you're preaching to, but anyways,
it's like, you know, like insert a picture of just a whole bunch of people on a plane. You know, a lot of these folks are just folks trying to get by with their day. Meanwhile, Kenneth Copeland, tube full of demons. It's just like, dude, what an asshole. Like, really, like.
That's why I had to buy a $60 million private jet. It's like, oh, is that the reason why?
Or better yet, man, even a better one, man, is Jesse Duplantis. If Jesus were alive today, he would be riding on a donkey. It's like, bro, it's like, I think he would be, man. He was a pretty humble guy. But anyways, we can see here the 68th showing a Russian, that looks to be a BMP, getting bombed into oblivion. Why did that sound, Matthew, like I was doing like a commercial? I was like, they're getting bombed into oblivion. I was like, damn. I was like, that's weird. Anyways, we can just see them
The
hammering this thing.
automotive stock in this country is being bombed into oblivion. The red light cells are in full swing. Come get you a
Wait.
Dodge today.
Wait a minute, hang on, man. Actually, I'm one of those narrators for those political ads. You know, like, America is getting torn down farther and farther every day. It can only go down so much farther. You know, something like that. You know, that like,
Do you
yeah.
know the real hot dog man? Are you aware of what he's really done?
Are you aware that him and Welcome Back Defenders are in another cussing match on Twitter? Would y'all believe it? Would y'all believe it? It's happening. But anyways, we got to hear that the Ukrainian forces are taking ground in Robotne. Very good to hear. And we also were able to hear that Russian artillery was getting destroyed behind the lines. We got to see a D-30 getting knocked out today. And there it is. There's the D-30. And we can see the Ukrainians lining it up with artillery and hitting it pretty hard. Hitting it harder than some hit stepchildren. But that's a topic for another discussion. Beyond that, we can see the artillery pieces getting hit quite significantly. Nick B said, LOL, Enforcer should do voice acting. You know, I want to do voice acting, though, like the guy, what was his name? Oh, man, I did the imitation of him. He's the guy who went, oh, the French. Like, I wish I could do, like, the whole
Oh, the French, Paul
wow.
Masson.
An anonymous just threw in a $333 donation. That must be Hal
Hey,
Rose.
is that Hal Rose?
That's got to be Hal
It's
Rose.
Hal Rose right there.
And Neil Visnot just threw in a 50. A huge shout out to Hal Rose. He always throws it in as an anonymous, but he's the only one who throws in 333s, so we know it's Hal Rose, but a big shout out to him. And we can see that the the Ukrainians are still hitting them. And Fried Brain said, why do you sound sort of like Sam Elliott? This makes it very easy to do, actually. Like, honestly, that's not even trying. Moving on from that, though, and on further down the lines and into the area of Odessa, we were able to see a Swedish-supplied patrol boat. And this has, of course, been supplied by the Swedes to Ukraine. Funnily enough, these were actually small enough to be trucked into Ukraine. They didn't have to sail to Ukraine. But the Ukrainians have been using them for coastal patrol for quite some time. They're really cool. Absolutely love them. And this picture came out today, and I was like, wow, that goes hard. So I put it here on the news just to show y'all that, because the pic goes hard. Feel free to screenshot. Moving on from that, though, and on out of that little picture that we got out of Odessa, it's now time for us to move on up to Kyiv to cover the air defense report. We also got to hear that over the course of the day, Ukraine was attacked with 109 drones, 6 Iskanders, and 9 X-101s, and 8 caliber cruise missiles. 53 of the drones did not reach their target, as well as 1 Iskander, 6 calibers, and 6 X-101s also being shot down as well. It does appear that the Ukrainians were able to claim a fairly significant success, at least in the air defense over the course of the day, although a decent amount of those did hit their targets, some of them producing pretty considerable civilian casualties. Moving on from that, though, it is time for us now, very early on, mind you, let me go get it really quickly, to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. And so, without further ado, it's actually quite a lengthy one, and that'll give me a little bit of a breather to try and figure out how to fix this cough, at least for the remaining segment. But nevertheless, here is the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. Peach.
Бажаю здоров'я. Щойно провів нараду з міністром оборони. Були сьогодні також доповіді військових. Тільки за минулу ніч росіяни застосували проти України більше сотні ударних дронів та 23 ракети різних типів, включно з балістикою. І кожна ніч, кожен день така загроза проти життя в Україні. Ми потребуємо посилення нашої протиповітряної оборони, це об'єктивна реальність. І всі домовленості, які були досягнуті з партнерами, але не були реалізовані, потрібно максимально активізувати. Патріоти, які зараз просто стоять десь на зберіганні у партнерів, мають реально захищати життя. І також варто і у Європі, і в Америці значно активніше виробляти системи ППО, ракети до них. Ми в Україні можемо забезпечити таке виробництво. І потребуємо відповідних політичних рішень. локалізація виробництв, відповідні ліцензії – це те, що допоможе не тільки нам, але й всім партнерам, хто хоче безпеки, а не хоче війни. Вже про це з усіма говорили, вже маємо розуміння, що це абсолютно можливо. І кожен російський удар є нагадуванням партнерам: треба зробити нарешті те, про що домовлялись. Я доручив міністру оборони та міністру закордонних справ активізувати контакти з партнерами щодо цього. В контексті Рамштайну зустріч готується. Головних завдань на сьогодні два – це саме ППО, саме Петріоти. І друге завдання – це контингенти, максимальне наближення всіх рішень, опрацювання всіх деталей. Також доручив на двосторонній основі працювати щодо ППО і особливо зі Сполученими Штатами Америки, які мають достатній потенціал, щоб допомогти припинити будь-який терор. Потрібне відповідне бажання і відповідні рішення, щоб захистити якнайбільше життів від російської балістики. Також посилення нашого повітряного щита одночасно буде посиленням всієї дипломатії. В сьогоднішньому російському ударі були ракети, які запустили з акваторії Чорного моря. Партнери знають, які це були судна та з якої частини моря відбувся цей запуск. Це одна з причин, чому Росія спотворює дипломатію, чому Росія не йде на безумовне припинення вогню. Вони хочуть залишити собі можливість бити з акваторії моря по наших містах, по наших портах. Припинення вогню на морі – це не тільки про вільне судноплавство і постачання продовольства морем. Це передусім про загальну безпеку і про наближення миру. Путін не хоче закінчувати війну. Він шукає, як залишити собі можливості розпалити війну в будь-який момент з ще більшою силою. Саме тому і надалі незмінно потрібні всі форми тиску на Росію, посилення наших спроможностей захищатись, збереження санкцій. І така дипломатія, така розмова з Москвою, яка не залишить їм жодної можливості вбивати. Якщо припинення вогню, то безумовне і таке, що взагалі не дозволяє знищувати життя. Україна погодилась на пропозицію Америки, на пропозицію повного, безумовного припинення вогню. Путін відмовляється. Ми очікуємо реакції Сполучених Штатів. Досі її немає. Очікуємо реакції всіх в Європі, всіх у світі, хто хоче миру. Кожен день балістика від російської армії. Кожен день вбивства людей. Постійні удари по нашій Сумщині, Харківщині, Дніпровщині, Херсонщині, Запоріжжю, Донеччині і іншим нашим регіонам. Сьогодні російська балістика проти Києва. Кожен день втрачені життя. Кожен день втрачені можливості для дипломатії. Це все не можна сприймати мовчки. За цей тиждень маємо рішення про додаткову підтримку від Нідерландів. 500 мільйонів євро на виробництво дронів в Україні та 2 мільярди євро на підтримку нашої стійкості в цьому році. Дякую. Швеція, дякуємо за пакет військової допомоги на 1,6 мільярдів доларів. Це якраз ППО, артилерія, зв'язок та інші абсолютно необхідні речі. Латвія. Я хочу подякувати за постачання дронів для нашої армії. Німеччина, дякую за важливе системне рішення про підтримку на цей рік. Підтримку збільшено до 7 мільярдів євро в цьому році. Далі є нове рішення про підтримку майже на 1 мільярд євро, і це окремі внески у наше внутрішнє виробництво зброї. Всі, хто з Україною зараз, всі захищають життя. Я дякую вам за підтримку. Дякую. Дякую нашим воїнам, всім українцям і українкам, хто дбає про нашу державу і наших людей. Слава Україні!
And Hiram Slava.
And with that, that's the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1138 of the war. And that's going to be moving us on into the second segment of the stream. Although, I'll be entirely honest with y'all, it's not going to be wildly long tonight. I do have to thank everyone, though, for raising over $4,000 for tonight's fundraiser on Nova Ukraine. That's absolutely impressive, very amazing. And I got to say a massive shout out to all of y'all. I don't know why the cough's getting worse. Massive shout out to all of y'all for doing that. That was absolutely incredible. But Matthew, take it away.
All right, so I'm going to take it over from here, if the enforcer will let me. I'm going to take it over from here so that way the enforcer can take a small little gasp of air and try to keep breathing the way a human should breathe. So with that, jumping into our last question segment, once again, a huge shout out to everybody tonight for helping us to reach well over the goal. We are now sitting at $4,013 raised, a nice $13 above the $4,000 mark. So very good to see. And once again, a huge shout out to everybody for helping to make that possible yet again. And we sincerely do appreciate it, because tonight we were not able to hype it up like we usually do. So thank you all for sort of like doing the heavy lifting for us tonight and hyping yourselves up to donate, because of course the cough is getting the best of us right now, and hopefully that gets better soon. But thank you all very much for once again making that fundraiser possible. But now it is time to jump into our last poll of the stream. And this one is on a bit of a different topic, but it's a topic that's on the top of my mind, and it's also on the top of many other people's minds as well. The question says, do you think tomorrow will be a Black Monday 2.0 style stock market crash in the United States? It looks like 70% said yes, and 31% said no. And of course, I don't claim to be an expert in economics or anything like that. I do have a working knowledge of it, but I don't claim to be an expert. But nobody's really sure. Like, economists believe they know what led to Black Monday, the first one, back in 1989, I think it was, or 87 or something like that.
87.
They are not really sure. What was that?
87.
87. So they're not really sure exactly what a single factor led to Black Monday actually occurring. Some people believe it was geopolitical instability. Some people believe it was overvaluation. It just depends on who you ask. So right now, I can tell you the distinct cause of this possible next crash tomorrow will be the tariffs. I'm not saying whether or not I agree with the tariffs or I disagree with them. I'm just saying that is probably what's going to lead to it, because so far global markets have opened. China's down 10%. That's pretty big for China. Also, I believe Japan and Taiwan have had circuit breakers kick in because they've dropped so drastically. So the futures in the United States are not looking good either. It's looking like the Dow might open 6 points down, which is quite bad. So unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to be with the bears. I'm with the 70% that said yes. Not saying that to fearmonger, but at least we can prepare for what is going to possibly happen tomorrow, which could be one of the biggest sell-offs we've seen in the history of the country on the stock market. So we'll just have to see what happens. But I'm seeing Bloomberg articles saying that this could be the biggest S&P sell-off since World War II. And we're already seeing that there's already been a crash over the last couple of days the market's been open. So it's looking pretty rough. Hopefully it doesn't get any rougher or too rough. But of course, that depends on the policy points that are being carried out by the government. But we'll have to see. But Enforcer, what do you say?
I'd have to say it's coming. That's what I believe. But we're going to get on into the questions because I don't think I'll be able to last much longer talking. I think I'm busted from yesterday. But let us move on into a couple of live chats. It's not going to be a large amount of them, maybe less than 10. And we'll try and knock them out here as best we can, but also as quickly as we can, so that way we can get on off air. So with that, we are on to the first live chat of this segment.
Also, by the way, a big shout out to Greg Carrier for throwing in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Greg, for helping also bring us up to $4,063 raised. And that's tremendous to see. Also, on the same line as the poll, we did get one question out of all the questions we have about the market. And since they asked, I figured we'd go ahead and address it right now. So Heather said, so if the market does crash, how does this affect the average homeowner in the United States? And once again, I'm not an expert, but here's the way I'm interpreting a crash happening tomorrow. If it does happen and it goes down significantly and it hits circuit breakers, for example, it drops so dramatically. I think the first breaker is at 7% of a decline. Then a circuit breaker kicks in, a 15-minute or 30-minute, something like that, trade halt gets put into effect. If it falls down 20%, trading is halted for the entire day. But then it can resume the next day and the crash can continue. So the circuit breakers will kick in. That's something that we have now that we did not have during Black Monday 1.0. So that would be different this time. So mainly what this crash is going to affect, it's going to affect people with retirement accounts. So if you have a 401k or, for example, a Roth IRA with investments and stocks, those people, if they're near retirement age and it's about time to start getting disbursements from those accounts, they're going to be the ones losing the value and they're going to be the ones in a tough spot. So I really hate to hear that, of course, because, of course, people that are at retirement age, they deserve to have a comfortable retirement. But of course, sometimes things like this happen and you're not able to get your money out. So that could happen. The average homeowner, if your home's paid off, you'll be perfectly fine until you go to sell your home. If the real estate market collapses, then you might lose some value on your home when you go to sell it. But right now, unless you have a mortgage, that would be the only thing that would change. If you have an adjustable rate mortgage, I'm not really sure. Actually, the rates might be going down. I'm not really sure. There might be a rate cut. So maybe that's the thing. I'm not an expert on that either, so take that with a grain of salt. But generally, though, it's going to affect the people with retirement accounts. That's the number one thing that's going to be affected by it. But Enforcer, would you like to weigh in?
I have no clue about economics, so Matthew probably answers that way better than I could. So with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So our next question here, and back into our world news. This one is going to go to, let's see, this one's going to go to Knox Date, who said, with war between the U.S. and Iran becoming more and more likely, how will Russia respond? And Knox, we've already heard that Russia has threatened the United States over the situation with Iran. They warned of catastrophic consequences if the U.S. goes in and attacks Iran like the way we're planning to do. And it's not clear what Russia means by that, because, of course, for Russia to get involved in a direct conflict between the U.S. and Iran in the Middle East, while they're still trying to fight the war in Ukraine, which they're still losing right now, that would be what you call an overextension of their forces. So if Russia even has the ability to step in, that would be a question. So I guess the only thing Russia could really do is threaten. And another thing they could do is potentially threaten nuclear weapons as well. But I'm not sure if they'd go that far over Iran. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I don't think the Russian Federation will really get involved that much. They're really stretched too thin right now. While they technically have a defensive pact with them, I don't really think they follow through in supporting the Iranians because they really don't have the power projection abilities to do that if they wanted to. So that would be my opinion on it. And I hope that addresses that somewhat well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next question is going to go to Dalton LMAO, who says, what do you guys think is the largest nuclear weapon in our arsenal on the planet? And thank you very much. If you're talking about the United States, the largest nuclear weapon in our arsenal is, I believe, the B-83 warhead, which is the largest bomb currently in service, and it has the maximum yield of 1.2 megatons. So that's what we've done. The biggest one that we've ever tested, I believe, was the Castle Bravo test. And I believe that was around 15 megatons, which is about 1,000 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb. So Russia has beat us out when it comes to the nuclear tests. Like, for example, I believe they tested the Sarabamba at one point, which was a whopping, what was it, Enforcer, like 100 megatons or something? It was like tremendously large. Yeah, 250. Yeah, it was huge. That was the largest nuclear missile or bomb ever tested, was the Sarabamba. Which was insane to do that because at the time when they tested it, the scientists were not sure if it was going to rip the atmosphere apart, but they did it anyway because Russia doesn't really care about safety, and it didn't rip the atmosphere apart, but it caused radiation to go all over the place. But that was the largest one. But Enforcer, what say you?
Actually, interestingly enough, it was actually the first, the Trinity test where they were scared it was going to burn the atmosphere. The one with the Zarabamba, they actually were scared with that one at that point, which I believe was detonated on this island up here, that it was going to end up splitting the crust. Like just the seismic force of it alone might end up breaking the entire continental shelf. So they cut down the size of the thing from 500 megatons to 250, which was half of the original size. And so actually, apparently it was only 50 megatons. Let me go check that because I heard it was supposed to be like 250. Megatons. Let me go check.
So it is 50 megatons. It says originally designed for 100 megatons, but it was scaled down to 50.
For some reason, I thought it was 250. I always heard that it was, but apparently I'm wrong. I'm gonna have to eat my foot on that one. But they originally thought, I remember from the original yield, they were scared it was going to crack the crust, and then they cut it down to half of its yield, so it went from 100 to 50. So I was completely wrong with the numbers here. It was not 500 to 250, it was 100 to 50. So with that,
What is that like? That's still like a million times more powerful than Hiroshima. That's not even in the same realm as the Hiroshima yield. Like that's not even close.
yeah, I mean that's it's absolutely insane, really, man, when you think about the size of that thing. But I don't even know. I forgot why they did it. Too. It was a little bit weird with that. Not with that. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, when I was looking at some research here on it, the Tsar Bomba was 10 times more powerful than all of the ordnance exploded during the entirety of World War II. So that's insane. In that one bomb alone, they set off more explosive power than the entire World War II. That's insane to really think about that. It's honestly like sketchy to even think that something like that was exploded anywhere on Earth. Intentionally. Because it's like, why would you intentionally even test something that large? That seems crazy. But of course, the Russians tried to do it. There's probably a reason why the United States has never tested one that big, because of course we have the same capabilities to do that, but we haven't done it because probably we care a little bit more about safety than the Russians. But anyways, jumping into our next question, this one is going to go to Triberium. He says, couldn't the nations that Iran threatens like this issue threats of their own if Iran or its backed terror groups use the same airspace mentioned in the attacks versus them or the USA is a hostile act?
They could, but a lot of those countries like to try and play it low key because the region largely relies on a great deal of stability for them to make money. So threatening wars really isn't in the wheelhouse of a lot of those countries because it would start to threaten their bottom line, which really has a lot to do with it being stable. Because for countries like the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait, as well as Iraq, the only way to get their oil or other major exports out into the global market is through the area of the Strait of Hormuz, which the Iranians have a chokehold on. So that's why they really don't want to play it too brazen, because then they can start to threaten to destroy their economy in the short and long term if they did that. So I hope that does address that somewhat well. And with that, we are going to be on to our third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Off Grid with Scott, who says hitting Iran is also hitting an arm of Russia, and Putin has threatened the U.S. if they attack Iran. And what is each of your guys' opinion on how it will go? And like the enforcer mentioned earlier, there is a defensive pact between Russia and Iran, but like we also mentioned, they're overextended because they're fighting a war of attrition, a very bad war of attrition in Ukraine, that they're still losing. After throwing all those guys and all that equipment into the meat grinder, they're still losing inside of Ukraine. So there's really nothing they can do, I believe, on the ground inside of Iran. They really don't have that capability to extend themselves that far. They could, of course, try, or they could try to hire mercenaries to go down there, but that's really probably not something they're going to do either, because they need that stuff for Ukraine. So I'm just going to say, generally, they're going to stay out of it, but they will be running their mouths very loudly. Like, I can guarantee you that. They will, of course, be making very threatening statements, and they might even start threatening missile strikes. That is one thing they could do, is start lobbing missiles down there at the U.S. forces. But if they did that, it would turn into, obviously, potentially World War III, which is a big step to take. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, in my opinion, I don't think the Russian Federation could really back them up. So while they have a technical defensive pact, they just don't have the ability to support a large force inside of Iran or really help them out in any way, because they just don't have the abilities to. Really, that's kind of like the short, roundabout answer to that. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And before we get to that one, of course, we have to get our Morse code decoders of the night. We did have the entire roster. It was Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Benu, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, Dave Millsap, Roy Fluffiness, Arabelle Garbo, Johnny Dog, and Norm Pritchett. And they said, tonight's LSA Morse code decipher says, Iran is getting ready to be wiped like a stepchild down, or something like that. LLT, LSA.
That was close. That sounded like it was almost on the nail. I think it was something like they're going to be beaten down like a stepchild or something, but that was pretty close. Got to give you all a huge congratulations. I would do the noises, but I don't think my voice will be able to tolerate that one. But a big congratulations to you all for getting it correct for the 1,138th of the day of the war, because you'll continue to get that correct time and time again. And so with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one's going to go to Jexa, who has a question about the Middle East. They said, I've been hearing that Israel has hit Turkish bases in Syria, and have you heard anything about this? And I will say, the one thing that we've heard is Israel has been conducting airstrikes on abandoned Syrian air bases that Turkey was allegedly moving in to try to retake for their own use. So Israel hit that before Turkey actually got to those bases. So they have not struck a base which Turkey is actively occupying. They simply went ahead and struck it and leveled it before Turkey could even get there. So no direct confrontation between the Turks and the Israelis yet. But of course, that could change. But Enforcer, what say you?
Matthew got that dead on the nails. There's not really a lot for me to add. Matthew got that right on the mark. And so with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is the lucky last person that threw in the lucky last question of the night?
All right, so let's see. This one, I'm trying to pick the last question here. This one is going to go to none other than Phoenix Xavier, who says, what would be the odds of Israel selecting their Samson option if things don't pan out in their favor? And also, what would the U.S. stance be on this?
I would doubt that Israel... I doubt that Israel would use a nuclear weapon in the situation. The reality is that's going to pan out in America and Israel's favor because we just have superior firepower on our side. The Iranians do not. So if it somehow was not going in their direction, I highly doubt that they would use a nuke. Everyone would probably just back off and get to the negotiating table before a nuke would be flung. But if they have to, they most likely would fling, well, they might fling a nuke, and if they did, it most likely would be at a major population center like Iran. But I still think that the odds of that are highly unlikely because in the worst case scenario, we still end up causing significant damage to Iran, and we all just, move on from that, and that would be that. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I gotta give a massive shout out and a huge thanks to everyone for raising $4,169 nice dollars on tonight's fundraiser. An absolutely incredible fundraiser, and great to see so many people come out and support it. I also got to say, massive thanks to everyone who has watched tonight, all at the peak. Let me go get the numbers. 1 second, y'all. 11.2 thousand people are here at the peak, and 61,000 people have watched so far. Once again, we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative of all of y'all being here, and we hope that y'all enjoyed the stream. We will see you all hopefully on Tuesday. I'll be honest with y'all, this has gotten worse tonight, so I can't really guarantee that I'm going to be on the mend by Tuesday, but hopefully I will be, so that way we can run another stream. But as I always like to say, behind the scenes, I'm not a Victorian era chimney sweep, so if I'm not really doing too well, it's not like we have to be back in the mills. We can just, take a day or two off. So hopefully we'll be able to see that we're back on air on Tuesday, but I can't give any guarantees. Nevertheless, I thank you all so much once again for watching, and we will hopefully see you all on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 48 hours of the news from around the world. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, and Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die.
And shockingly enough, even with the stream being this short, we've had over 61,000 people join the stream tonight, which is insane because we've ended this thing super early tonight. But once again, thank you all for wishing Enforcer well. Hopefully he does get better soon, and hopefully we don't have to put in work like a Victorian era child. But once again, thank you all for watching the stream tonight. And also thank you all for making the fundraiser possible with over almost $4,200 raised. That is well above the goal, almost double the goal, actually getting pretty close to it. So once again, huge shout out for making that happen. And it's a very good cause, of course, in Nova, Ukraine. But we will see you all tomorrow midday if there is enough news for a short war video, which it's a little bit sketchy about tomorrow because I think the news is going to be mainly focused on the financial side of things because people get very distracted with that, of course, for a good reason. So we'll have to see if there's enough news for a short war video. If there is, you'll probably be hearing from me because Enforcer does not sound like he's going to be in good shape tomorrow. So I'll probably be doing that one as well. And hopefully we'll be back on Tuesday night for another nightly war news stream. But with that, folks, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. And with that, bye-bye for now.
Spring army shall stand up. Ukraine.